BBC Radio Manchester.
1:45 now. Manchester City Council's announced it can no longer to afford to provide youth services across the city. It says it's got to save at least £109 million over the next year. It says it can only afford to retain a small budget for the most vulnerable and wants other organisations to come in and to help run the youth services. Well, there is a lot of concern about it, and with me now is Mark Krantz, a campaigner with Manchester's Coalition Against Cuts. Good to see you, Mark. Thanks for coming in.
Hi, Steve.
So you've been talking with youth workers this morning. What's their reaction been?
Well, many of the youth workers I've spoken to this morning are going to be losing their jobs in a couple of days' time. There's about 300 youth workers directly employed by the City Council, about 200 full-time posts, many are part-time. But these skilled youth workers, dedicated youth workers, are already lost their jobs. That's why in the press release now from the City Council and on the website, it says that they don't have enough staff to maintain the existing centres. So the council have made a fact. They have got rid of the youth workers. They've either taken voluntary redundancy or they're going to be redeployed. They've destroyed the youth service. It's an absolute crime.
And how worried are they about the young people and the children that they're actually working with?
Well, they're very worried and very upset, not least in the fact that they've been forbidden to talk to the youth themselves to say, look, this service is going to shut. They've been forbidden under threat of disciplinary action to speak to the press or to make any statements. And look, let's be honest, everyone knows you don't become a youth worker for the money. You become a youth worker because you care about young people, you want to help them, have a second chance in life. Many of the youth workers actually went to youth clubs themselves and then later on trained and came back and have helped run what has been an excellent service across the city with 34 youth centres in all.
The council says it can only afford to retain a small budget for the most vulnerable and wants other organisations to come in and run the services. Will they come in and run the services, other organisations?
Well, it's clear that they haven't actually named any of these organisations. And if you look at the ones that they've suggested, schools are not youth clubs. I'm a former teacher. We do lessons. Youth service, youth work is about something different from formal education. The other group they've mentioned is Connections. Well, the Connection service has been cut massively by 80%, and that's shutting down across the city. They've also mentioned voluntary services. Well, the voluntary services get their money by grants from the council. They've all been shut down. So there are no other providers. Youth work is nothing, it's not about making a profit, so how is it going to be privatised? Who is going to run it? They have no idea. They've shut the youth service, they've abandoned the youth of the city without making any concrete plans for provision. It's an absolute disgrace.
But the council have got to make cuts, so where are they going to save the money?
Well, the council have had a budget given to them by the government that is the biggest cut in the country, £109 million, 25% cut, and even more to come next year. And I, among thousands of others, signed the Manchester petition that says to the government, look, this is an unfair settlement. They even admit, the government, that it is an unfair settlement. Why should Manchester, which has some of the poorest wards in the country, face the biggest cuts? But the City Council that got behind this petition was very, very well organised, very, very well supported. What's happened to it? Why aren't we going down to London to see Eric Pickles to say we demand a fairer settlement? Because when it comes to money in the country, there's plenty of money in the pockets of the bankers and the millionaires, and the arms dealers. And we know it wasn't young people that caused the economic crisis and the budget deficit. It was bankers in the City of London speculating in housing and everything else. Why should the youth lose their future and lose their youth facilities in order to pay back money that the bankers have frittered away?
Did the youth workers have any alternative suggestions about a way forward? What is there another way forward?
Well, it's disingenuous is one way to put it. A lie is another when it comes to the council saying we're going to have a consultation. First of all, they get rid of the youth workers, then they shut the youth centres, and then they ask for a consultation to ask what the people think, what do the youth think, what do the parents think. It's supposed to be the other way round, and they also have failed in their legal obligation to do an impact assessment. And we in Manchester Coalition Against the Cuts have got an open letter to Richard Leese, who leads the council now, he was a former youth worker in North Manchester, to say, Richard, what do you think, what does the council think will be the impact of shutting down its youth service, added to the fact that many young people now will not get help at college, at further education, with the abolition of the Educational Maintenance Award, and that the prospect to go to university is much, much more difficult with the high fees. And on top of that, we've got rising unemployment, particularly among youth in the city. So, you know, what does the councillors think could be, or most likely will be, the impact? Driving in to come into this interview today, I heard we're looking, you know, unfortunately, 30 years ago, Manchester, with other cities, Liverpool, Brixton and elsewhere, had riots 30 years ago. The youth service took 30 years to build in this city, and it arose after those riots when it was a concern, well, what about young people? They seem alienated. They don't seem to have any hope or future. Let's provide concrete, constructive youth centres and youth workers to work with them. And the other thing, and this really does hurt me in the sense that as a teacher, some of the young people I used to teach were killed in gun-related crime in this city. Fortunately, very, very fortunately, through a lot of partnership between youth workers, the police, council, parents and others, that Manchester gun problem has diminished. It's not there anymore. It's more likely to come back if young people are hanging around on the streets, got nothing to do, and are more likely to be drawn into that sort of thing. And antisocial behaviour, much less serious than gun crime, will also rise. And in the long run, I don't believe this will save any money, because if really bad things happen and young people get into really bad situations, it can end up costing a lot more.
OK, Mark, thank you for coming in to talk to us. Mark Krantz, a campaigner with Manchester's Coalition Against Cuts. Well, no one from the council got on the programme today, but they did send us a statement from Mike Livingston, who's the Director of Children's Services. He said young people represent the future of our city and remain committed to ensuring that we provide the best possible services. And they say the council wants to hear from parents and young people about the services they offer. It is BBC Radio Manchester. It's Backstreet Boys now.